Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? Let's call today, shall we? Thursday, May 11th, 2023, and let you know thereby that I am pre-recording this one, just so that we have some material available for you on Thursday. As you know, I'm out and away from the desk today and traveling down to see college boy graduate. And I don't know, can't fault me for that, right? I got to get down there for that. But I wanted to leave you with some news and material to consider today. I thought maybe a good place to start out would be to get back to a story I started on Tuesday. I brought this story up just to let you know that there was yet another state, red state, quote unquote red state, I guess we should say these days, where the local Republican supermajority was nonetheless having difficulty finding their way to passing either a more restrictive abortion ban or anti-trans legislation, and how that had been blocked almost single-handedly, but of course now finding some support in the legislature in Nebraska, how citizen initiatives on the ballot had blocked more restrictive abortion laws in Kansas, in Kentucky, elsewhere, and how now in very red South Carolina, the legislature there was likewise having some difficulty, as they found that every single woman in the state Senate, and there are only 5 of them, but every single one of them, regardless of party, had joined together for the purposes of blocking a complete ban by South Carolina's legislature. They were attempting a ban after conception on all abortion. And wouldn't you know it, where there were a few, even just a few, women in the legislature, they had some objections. And so I had started to fill you in on the story written here in the New York Times by Kate Zernike, The Unexpected Women Blocking South Carolina's Near Total Abortion Ban, the Sister Senators, as they call themselves. And I had gotten through the first part of it just to sort of put it on record that there was such an effort happening in South Carolina. But what I didn't get to, and what was probably understood behind the scenes, and maybe you read on about these 5 senators and thereby learned a little bit more about it, but you must have suspected that there's some pretty deep-seated chauvinism and misogyny, I imagine, just sort of embedded mentally in the rest of the South Carolina state legislature. And I just thought it was kind of important, one, that you got a little bit more on the background of these 5 women senators, and 2, that you saw a little something of what it was they were up against. So, by way of setup, I'll reread at least a little bit of the piece that we read on Tuesday, which begins, when the United States Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade last summer, advocates on either side presumed that the country would divide along the bright color lines, red states completely banning abortion, blue states protecting it. That prediction failed to anticipate many things, including, of course, these sister senators. The sisters, as they call themselves, are the women in the South Carolina State Senate, the only women, 3 Republicans, 1 Independent, 1 Democrat, in a legislature that ranks 47th among states in the proportion of women. As a bloc, they are refusing to allow the legislature to pass a near total ban on abortion despite a Republican supermajority. So, you get the idea. You get the idea of what they're up against. They, of course, have faced threats of primary challenges. Anti-abortion activists have paraded empty strollers in front of their offices or in front of them. Groups of children as well with them, heckling the women as, quote, baby killers. The plastic spines that they had been sent by the local Students for Life group, and that the 3 of them had stood holding them as trophies on the Senate floor, saying, as One of them did, Senator Katrina Shealy. I've got one hell of a spine already, but now I've got another backup. A good line, really. Anyway, after 3 days of debate, it turns out, during which the women spoke for as long as 4 hours each at a time, the Senate leadership acknowledged again that it did not have the votes to pass the ban. Right? And then there was the comment, well, I don't think the Republican Party saw us coming because we didn't do what they thought we were going to do. Ms. Shealy, the senior member of the group, said in an interview, they thought we would just do what they told us to do. And that was the mistake of the Republican leadership there, I guess. But as men argued that abortion was killing babies, the 5 women insisted that abortion bans are about controlling women, and they will not be controlled. They have argued the ban reduces women to baby machines, like the dystopia of The Handmaid's Tale, and rejected as ludicrous claims from male legislators that women use abortion as birth control, right? The old trope. And Senator Shealy put that to rest quite directly. I don't believe any woman goes out on Friday night and has sex and gets pregnant so that she can have an abortion the next day. The debate in South Carolina. And here's the balance of the story. A deeply red state where abortion, for now, remains legal up to 22 weeks, shows how much has not happened according to plan now that overturning Roe has made abortion bans a reality rather than a symbolic gesture or a plank in a party platform. Many Republican-controlled states have outlawed abortion, largely through bans triggered by the Supreme Court decision in June. And that is to say, these are, I guess from their point of view, very clever maneuvers that when Roe v. Wade was still on the books, in anticipating its being overturned someday, the state legislatures forced their Republican majorities, and some of them went along willingly, to enact bans that, although they would then have been unconstitutional under Roe v. Wade, would kick in should Roe v. Wade ever be overturned. And that was close enough to performative that the Republicans, I guess, at that point went along with it. And like I say, clever from their point of view, because once the calculus changed and the country was awakened to the real possibility of abortion being banned everywhere, despite the fact that large majorities in almost every state, even the red ones, actually favor maintaining access to abortion. If you pull that stunt before Roe v. Wade is overturned, you get a different result, I think. It's very possible. Then you get when you say, okay, now the way has been cleared and enacting this ban will mean there's a ban going forward. That's very different. And there are probably enough Republicans who would feel the pressure from their own constituents in really banning abortion that they might just step up and block the thing. As we found out, of course, many Republican-controlled states have outlawed abortion largely through those bans, but states that were expected to, like once Roe v. Wade was overturned and they actually put the question to people, states where that were expected to, they have not. Stopped by voters in ballot measures, Kansas and Kentucky, Republican legislators here in South Carolina and Nebraska, or courts that have temporarily blocked the ban, saying they are likely unconstitutional, as was the case in Utah, wow, and Wyoming, wow. So, what's going on? Pro-life and pro-choice have proven muddy, if not increasingly meaningless distinctions, and views on abortion have turned out to be far more nuanced than a red-blue divide. Polls show groups that might have been expected to generally back bans on abortion, Republican women among them, moving away from a desire to make most abortions illegal. Even in South Carolina, polls show most voters support some abortion access and disapprove of overturning Roe. There's got to be a gray area, said Senator Penry Gustafson, another of the Republicans. The 3 Republican women are white. The 2 others are black, and all describe themselves as holding deep religious faith. They are all mothers, and several have fostered children or supported relatives or other young people through college, and they say their experience of pregnancy informs their views on abortion. Well, of course, why wouldn't it? In fact, one might even extend that further. I don't know whether they would say so, but I would, that the lack of experience of pregnancy among the male legislators renders their view on abortion considerably less informed, to say the least, if not invalid entirely, as they would argue in the gun debate. Oh, you said clip when you meant magazine, therefore you're not allowed to even discuss the topic. Well, you've never been pregnant, and you never will be because you're male. Well, maybe you have nothing to say about it. Never been pregnant and never can be for medical reasons because you're female. Well, you're built for it, certainly, and you probably have a more thoroughly informed understanding of it through conversation with your friends, neighbors, and peers as women. And so, or as we now say, well, of course, we're talking about people who aren't capable of becoming pregnant through medical difficulty or whatever. But at any rate, you get the idea. Certainly, it's discussed entirely differently among people who spent some considerable portion of their life believing that they might one day become pregnant, whether or not they ever did. Anyway, I think you know about the division we're talking about. All the women support the right to abortion, but with some restriction, though they vary on gestational limits. Okay, so those Republicans, they're still Republicans, but what are they saying? Senator Margie Bright Matthews, a Democrat, and Senator Mia McLeod, who left the Democratic Party this year, both lean toward codifying Roe, which allowed some right, at least, to abortion up to fetal viability around 24 weeks. Ms. Gustafson and Sandy Senn, the third Republican, would prefer to restrict abortion after the first trimester, with exceptions. Ms. Shealy said if it were up to her personally, she would leave the decision to women, their partners, and their doctors. Women know what's best for their bodies. Still, she and other Republican women describe themselves as pro-life, not pro-choice. That's interesting. They proudly embrace the state's Republican creed, whatever that even means, which begins, quote, "I do not choose to be a common man," unquote, and includes a pledge, quote, "to think and act for myself." I don't know whether I've ever run into a state creed or a state Republican creed anyway, but what would there even need to be a creed for, whatever that is? Is that just like another word for a mission statement? I don't know. Not really. It's not supposed to be, but that seems to be the way they're using it. Anyway, they also believe that women should be allowed to think and act for themselves. That's crazy. And that most would say that the decision on abortion should be left up to them. There are millions of women who feel like they have not been heard, Ms. Gustafson said during their filibuster last month, and that's why I've been standing up here this long. Their positions hardly make them champions to reproductive rights groups. Two of the three Republican women, Ms. Shealy and Ms. Gustafson, voted in favor of a 6-week ban, which the Senate passed. This is before most women know they are pregnant. So what are they doing among this group? The Republican women successfully insisted on adding exceptions for medical emergencies or cases of rape, incest, or fetal anomalies. They call it a compromise between the ban at conception, which the Republican conference is attempting to pass now, and bills that they put forward that would have placed the question of abortion rights to voters on the ballot, or banned abortion after the first trimester, with some exceptions. The Republican leadership in the Senate declined to put those measures to a vote. Ms. Senn voted no on the 6-week bill, saying any ban should begin at the end of the first trimester and no earlier. The House has refused to vote on the 6-week bill, holding out for the ban at conception, but still has until Thursday, that's today, to do so. Instead, it has pressured the Senate to repeatedly vote on the ban at conception. Senate leadership has done so, despite having acknowledged it did not have the votes. If they had done it the one time, that's one thing, Ms. Senn said. I'm not even sure what she means here. If they had done it the one time, that's one thing, Ms. Senn said. Oh, I see. Tried to pass it in the Senate the one time. But then a second and third time, they knew what the outcome was going to be. They were forewarned. It's like they dared them, agreed Ms. Matthews. I'm like, you're going to get it, Ms. Sen added. You're going to get an earful. An earful she delivered. We, the women, have not asked for, nor do we want your protection, she said, addressing her male colleagues on the floor, wearing flip-flops for comfort during the filibuster. We don't need it. We don't buy into the ruse that what you really want is to take care of us. Ms. Gustafson, elected in 2020, got her first taste of politics when a friend took her to a Tea Party rally in 2016. That's no friend, by the way. She had owned a restaurant and acted in community theater, including in the role originated by Dolly Parton in the classic film about strong Southern women, Steel Magnolias. Banning at conception allows nothing for the in-between or things that we can't even conceive of, she says. There are too many things that can happen. And, that's as specific as it has to get. It's true. The women have found support from a few male Republicans in the chamber, but others have accused them of betraying their party by seeking bans short of one starting at conception. I'm not willing to sit by and let the goalposts be moved for what it means to be pro-life for the Republican Party, said Senator Richard Cash. Well, tough crap, dude. You're going to have to. As other states in the region have restricted abortion, the Republican women worry that South Carolina has become a destination for it. That's an ironic twist. The number of abortions has risen since Roe was overturned, and nearly half are women coming from other states, according to state figures. The South Carolina legislature is an unexpected place to find so much talk of women's rights. It took until 1969 to formally ratify the 19th Amendment, which of course gave all American women the right to vote in 1920. But nearly 50 years until they finally said, all right, we acknowledge women should have the right to vote. Abortion rights supporters were shocked in January when the state's highest court declared that privacy protections, privacy, that's actually where the original right came from. Privacy protections in the state constitution extended to a right to abortion, overturning a 6-week ban with limited exceptions. That opinion was written by the only woman on the court, who has since retired, and of course, whom the legislature has since replaced with a man. The Republican leadership is trying to pass the new 6-week ban in the hopes that the new court will overturn the decision. So it was a decision overturning their first 6-week ban. They hope that by replacing the one woman on the court, they'll overturn their original overturning of the first 6-week ban. I don't know how realistic that is, but that's what they're looking for. Both Ms. Shealy and Ms. Gustafson knocked off popular incumbents to win their seats. Ms. Shealy ran as a petition candidate against a Republican and wore bedazzled Wonder Woman sneakers to win it. Interesting. She notes here parenthetically, I still wear them when I get mad, she said. A newspaper editorial at the time accused her of a, ready? Quote, overeager desire to be liked. Oh no, you can't have that. Naturally, that gets the dramatic. She wants to be liked. I can't believe a politician would have such a desire. But hers, of course, is overeager because it's a desire that belongs to a her. And that's horrible, right? Well, anyway, for 3 years, she was the only woman in the chamber. And leaders continued to address the body as, quote, gentlemen of the Senate. One Republican colleague said women, ready for this one? I mean, this is a legislator saying this out loud on public record, said women should be barefoot and pregnant, not in the legislature. And later told her that women were, quote, a lesser cut of meat. So this is happening currently in like the modern current day legislature. Wow. Now, this is interesting too, by the way. Let me just pause for a second to say, I know it could be just force of habit, that members were still addressing one another, the entirety of the group as gentlemen of the Senate, because, of course, they were men up until the election of the first woman. I don't know if ever, but the first one in the current makeup of the Senate. So, I mean, I guess you could be forgiven if it was a force of habit thing. Meh. But, it doesn't take that much to change over. Well, what's interesting is that what's getting them tripped up is the preferred pronouns, essentially. Here, you have added a woman to the Senate, and then you say, well, gentlemen of the Senate. Well, you understand. I mean, gentleman and lady of the Senate. I thought that was so awkward. Well, like on the one hand, you'd say, well, she prefers to be addressed by the proper pronouns. And then they say, I don't care for this pronoun stuff. And it's like, well, this is a woman born as a woman. What do we say? Cisgender, straight, white woman who's asking to be identified as a cisgender, straight, white woman. And what do you know? We hate pronouns so much that we won't even address women born as women who want to identify as women as women. That's how much we hate pronouns here in South Carolina. I mean, I'm not there in South Carolina, but come on. They're not even going to stand up for pronouns when they're the ones that they insist are the only ones that should be allowed, the ones that are assigned at birth and that they can identify by sight. Even those pronouns we won't recognize. Not to mention, I don't even have words for you on a lesser cut of meat. Anyway. I was reading on to get to this kind of stuff. That was the point of all this. Now, there's still more. Now, chair of the Committee on Family and Veterans Services, Ms. Shealy, is the self-described mama hen, not a mama bear, but a mama hen of the 5 women. Come, girls, she said, herding them to a photograph. Chop, chop. Female legislators are still unusual enough to attract attention. The women, I don't even know what this is supposed to mean, but the women, a lobbyist exclaimed as the quintet passed him on the escalator, I need to go with y'all. Okay. A parent in the upstate region of South Carolina objected to The Handmaid's Tale even being in a school library, by the way, after Miss Sen mentioned the book during the filibuster. Oh, what's The Handmaid's Tale? I better find out what that is. Porn. Or I don't know what, subversive literature. And so now she wants it out of there. But she and the other senators say that most of their constituents agree with them, not with the crazy lady who tried to ban The Handmaid's Tale from a school library. Older women in particular, Ms. Sen said, have sent notes with small donations. One of them said, this old crone is proud of you. And women who staff the legislative offices have flashed them a thumbs up. One stopped Ms. McLeod as she got out of her car on Wednesday. That would be last Wednesday. She said, thank you for what you did last week, which I guess would be 2 weeks ago. She said, many of them work for Republican men. Ms. Matthews added, they always say, we can't say what we really think. And that's pretty sad all by itself. That brings us to the end of the article. It wasn't a tremendous thing. We didn't have to spend that much time on it. But I wanted you to get a flavor for what else was in this article and what they were facing there in the South Carolina State Senate and how extraordinary it is that 3 Republican women, even women who had voted in the past, like, you would have dismissed them in the past, and maybe this might be of interest to Greg in that sense. People who you would have dismissed as, well, you voted for a 6-week ban, and a 6-week ban is ludicrous. Yeah, you voted for a ban with some exceptions, but wouldn't you say, like, you, in doing your whip count, you'd probably be like, these 3 women are lost to us. Yes, they're women, and you had hoped to find some support there, but really there's only going to be 2 no votes here. I imagine there'll be more no votes, male Democratic senators. But it's pretty interesting. 1, that they would do it, and 2, that even though the numbers are small, it's unanimous among the women. So that's really something. Anyway, I wanted to share that story with you and give you a feel for the rest of it too. So now we'll make the jump from one story where some legislators were doing the right thing in a Republican state to the entirely unpredictable story that some legislators are doing the wrong thing in Republican states. Ready for this one? Okay. From Fox Business, foxbusiness.com, I don't know whether they are, I don't know how closely connected to the television network they are, but probably, overlaps. I guess they took this story from that. And I guess they must have thought they were reporting this one with pride. Thomas Catenacci is the author of the piece, and this is from a little while ago. Do they use dates or not over there at Fox Business? Oh, there they are. I've scrolled past it. May 3rd, so not quite so long ago, but ready for this one? Oklahoma, that's the state we're talking about. Oklahoma bans books? What? No, more than a dozen woke banks from doing business with the state. I wonder whether this will come back to bite them or not. Not really sure. It should, but, banks are a little cautious about things like this. Anyway, the state will not do business with banks which are, quote, beholden to social goals that override their fiduciary duties, unquote, Oklahoma State Treasurer says. And once again, the state stepping in to say it's forbidden for private enterprises to decide how they want to do business, and we'll have nothing to do with people who make that decision. Ready for this? Oklahoma is taking action Wednesday. That would be last Wednesday. That is to say a week from what? Let's see. This is May 3rd. So yeah, a week ago from, I don't know. Well, this was May 3rd. So I don't even know. It's end of April, I would guess. All right. No, this might have been in the very beginning of May that they were talking about this Wednesday. Okay, all right. Well, forget it. You don't need to know that. Figure it out with the count. I'm just handing this off to you to do the figuring out. All right. Well, I'll walk you through it. I'm just curious myself. So May 3rd was in fact the Wednesday. And so, yes, that now means that a week ago yesterday, Oklahoma was taking action to ban 13 major financial institutions from doing business with the state after a review determined the banks engaged in energy boycotts. That's what was upsetting them and what made them now woke. But yeah, the thing that caught my eye about it was banning 13 major financial institutions from doing business with the state. And I don't know how many major financial institutions the state was doing business with, so whether it mattered that these 13 were being banned. But my thought also went immediately to the state needing to do some banking or borrow some money or handle some sort of financial transaction, and some of these banks saying, sorry, now all of a sudden you don't need us anymore, or they already had loans with them, or maybe legislators who had loans with them and say, you voted for this thing and we're calling your loan. Remember, you don't want to do business with us. We're too woke. The sort of thing that Republican bankers ordinarily would do to Democrats. Whether they'll do that to Republicans remains to be seen. Oklahoma State Treasurer Todd Russ is planning to announce the sweeping measure Wednesday morning, and I assume he went ahead and did so, which represents one of the most aggressive actions any state has taken against banks pursuing so-called environmental, social, and governance initiatives. And of course, that means that it has 3 letters in the initials, which means it's the same thing as CRT, or BLM for that matter. This one is ESG, Environmental, Social, and Governance Initiatives. The move ultimately blocks the banks from managing billions of dollars in Oklahoma pensions, investments, and other state entities. The energy sector is crucial to Oklahoma's economy, providing jobs for our residents and helping drive economic growth, Russ said in a statement. It is essential for us to work with financial institutions that are focused on free market principles and not beholden to social goals that override their fiduciary duties, even if their biggest investors are telling them that we want you not to invest in fossil fuel development. And that is, in fact, our expression of our free market principles, and that's how we want you to approach your fiduciary duties. The state says, well, 10 people got a job in the oil and gas industry in this state, and so therefore the state legislature is going to run the banks, because that's not socialisms at all. The ban impacts some of the largest asset managers and banks in the country, including BlackRock, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and State Street. BlackRock alone reported in April that it has a staggering $9.1 trillion in assets under management. Oklahoma's actions come 3 months after Russ sent a letter and questionnaire to dozens of banks and financial institutions on February 1st, asking about their climate and energy investment policies. Russ noted at the time that BlackRock manages more than 60% of the Oklahoma public employees' retirement system. So what could be better for the state than having the bank that managed $9 trillion in assets for you suddenly have to jettison that and no longer having any fiduciary duty to maximize your returns when it does so? Maybe they'll just sell them off in a fire sale. I don't know. Well, anyway, that's probably not what they'll do. But under a 2022 law passed by the state's legislature last year, the state's treasurer is mandated to probe the investment policies of banks it does business with and assemble a list of companies determined to be engaged in a boycott of the energy sector. Russ's office said it received almost 160 responses, which helped inform the decision Wednesday. And we'll see what they end up defining as a quote-unquote boycott of the energy sector. We appreciate the prompt response from these financial institutions, Russ added. Our state's financial partnerships should reflect our priorities and values, and it is our responsibility to partner with companies that share our vision for a strong and prosperous Oklahoma economy, and that includes our energy sector. Overall, as of 2022, Oklahoma's oil and gas industry and its component sectors sustained 4,000 businesses, produced $19 billion in state gross domestic product, provided state households with $16.5 billion in earnings, and created 85,050 jobs, according to state data. The state is the nation's sixth largest crude oil producer and fifth largest producer of marketed natural gas. Okay. ESG standards pursued by major financial institutions, though, prioritize environmental investments. And remember, we're reading Fox Business News on this. Prioritize environmental investments, boosting green energy projects once deemed risky, but I guess no longer, over traditional oil and gas investments, as well as corporate social priorities such as boardroom diversity initiatives, which is what they're really upset about. Critics, including attorneys general, state treasurers, the energy industry, no surprise, and consumer groups have accused ESG-focused asset managers of sidestepping their legally mandated fiduciary duty of looking out for the well-being of clients whose money they manage. Of course, they're not. They are investing in industries that they think will produce a healthy return, just not the industries that are complaining that they're not getting invested in. Will they also return a healthy return? They might. But then again, they might not for many other reasons. And as you know, the business decision law shields most of these executives when they make these decisions from retaliatory lawsuit, etc., etc. We'll see whether it shields them from lawsuit by the state. Leaders from states with large fossil sectors have particularly pushed back on the ESG movement, arguing it forces pension funds to directly counter the financial interests of their states. Not necessarily true. This is a significant step. Oh dear. Well, everything has reset here, and they just reloaded the page, I guess, to help boost the foxbusiness.com traffic figures. But here we are. We got to go looking for this again. Leaders from states with large fossil sectors have particularly pushed back on this. Yes, here we are. This is a significant step by Treasurer Russ in guarding his state's financial security against ESG advocates like BlackRock, the notorious liberals, and State Street and other financial institutions that boycott energy companies, if that's what they're doing, and prioritize agendas that run contrary to Oklahoma taxpayers' interests. Unless, of course, Oklahoma taxpayers would like to see development in alternative energies and alternative fuels. But this, according to Derek Kreifels, Kreifels, and really, who cares? The CEO of the State Financial Officers Foundation, in speaking to Fox Business last Wednesday. Treasurer Russ and state financial officers across the country, there might be another one, are at the forefront of the fight against ESG. Rawr, man the barricades against ESG, everyone. People are talking on, street corners, water coolers. ESG has really got my attention. Anyway, they are therefore, I guess, ensuring that American families' savings are invested according to their values and not ESG extremists like bankers. Grosvenor Capital Management, Lexington Partners, First Mark Fund Partners, Touchstone VC Global Partners, WCM Investment Management, William Blair, Actis, and Climate First Bank were also among the banks banned from doing business with Oklahoma on Wednesday. Companies may be added to or removed from the state's list in the coming months, Russ's office said. So remember, if your bank or management fund isn't getting enough action from Oklahoma's state funds, you can go to them and cry about woke people and see if they'll take the money out of their hands and give it to you. It's a great pitch to try to get yourself some business. In response to this report, BlackRock and JP Morgan Chase pushed back, saying they have invested billions of dollars in the energy sector. BlackRock is a leading investor in Oklahoma's energy sector. Well, that's not great, but that's what they say. A BlackRock spokesperson told Fox Business, on behalf of our clients, we have invested over $15 billion in public energy companies based in Oklahoma and approximately $320 billion in public energy companies globally, including investments in both traditional energy sectors like oil and gas and in renewables. BlackRock offers our clients the choice as they need to help them achieve the investment objectives, their objectives, for low fees. Low fees. We believe lists like these ultimately raise costs for Oklahoma taxpayers. They do. They cost money to produce. And reduce returns for firefighters, teachers, and state employees seeking to retire with dignity. So screw that. Apparently. They also undermine free market competition and choice for investors. JP Morgan Chase said Russ's decision was, quote, baseless. As the nation's largest bank, we are among the top financiers across the energy sector, including traditional energy sources. The bank told Fox Business, between 2021 and 2022, we provided over $2 billion in financing and other services to 40 Oklahoma companies in the oil and gas space. The statement continued, our business practices are not in conflict with this anti-free market decision, and we look forward to continuing to serve customers and communities in Oklahoma. But of course, that depends on the state treasurer adopting some semblance of logic, and following his own logic, he would probably be forced ordinarily to say, well, let's see, we're not going to do businesses with banks that boycott traditional energy sectors. These guys don't boycott traditional energy sectors, so I guess we'll continue to do business with them. That would be the logical way of doing it. But instead, the Republicans have found 3 letters put together which allow them to say that equals a boycott, as opposed to, well, we do offer a fund to some of our clients that avoid investments in oil and gas, and then we offer others of our customers who are interested funds that do invest in traditional oil and gas ventures. But this will be termed a boycott, of course, probably as defined by the other companies who are looking to grab up this cash. Like if there's trillions of dollars under investment and it's happening with your competitors, you just say, we don't, if you don't offer one, or I guess even if you do, you could just lie about it and say, we don't offer a ESG fund to our clients. We just don't have one. Therefore, you should take all of those billions of dollars out of the banks that have more choices for their investors and put it with us who have less choices for their investors. And you'll therefore make more money because everyone knows less choice equals higher returns, even though the whole basis of the free market thing was, no, more choice means more profits for everybody and yada, yada, even though maybe that isn't even true. Anyway, Just wanted to let you know that there was such a thing so that you were aware of it and that you might see it explode into other states as well and will probably ruin the economy or lead to investing enormous sums of public funds or pension monies with people who are unscrupulous, backwards, and or stupid. And when that money ends up getting misappropriated or embezzled, you'll supposedly know whose fault it is, but then they'll just say, well, it really was BLM and they stole all the money. So anyway, we'll be ready for it when it happens, I guess. Here's an unusual story that I think makes a great pre-recorded show edition, something that ordinarily I would let sit by waiting for, I don't know, say a Friday or one of these pre-recorded shows where we don't have the time pressure doesn't feel the same when I'm pre-recording the show. So how about this one? I picked it up from The Hill, but get this story. Ready? Saudi alfalfa sparks tension in Arizona's Sonoran Desert. I really wasn't expecting this story. How about this? Sharon Udasin, I don't know how she pronounces this one. This is an unusual last name. Udasin. And she has this unusual story to go with it. In an arid pocket of Arizona's rural southwest, thirsty tufts of alfalfa are guzzling unlimited amounts of groundwater, only to become fodder for dairy cows. That's not so unusual. I mean, it's kind of a bad sustainability practice, but not only are they becoming fodder of dairy cows, they are becoming fodder for dairy cows some 8,000 miles to the east. This Sonoran desert field of green, cultivated by a Saudi Arabian, or Saudish Arabian, as we like to say, a Saudi Arabian dairy giant, I didn't even know there was one, has become a flashpoint among residents who resent the Middle Eastern company's unbridled and steeply discounted usage of a dwindling regional resource. I mean, I never would have bet on this. I never would have predicted this. But I mean, it's actually, given the circumstances, quite predictable. It's amazing that we didn't see it coming. Because the Vicksburg, Arizona property is just one of many farms in the neighborhood growing water-intensive grains, it is also turning the spotlight on legal loopholes in state groundwater laws that enable such use in the first place. We don't have any restrictions on our groundwater, Holly Irwin, a La Paz County supervisor, told The Hill. So it's like a free-for-all. In other words, essentially what's happening here is when American farmers say they want all the water they could possibly use for free with no restrictions, they say, well, that's just freedom and free enterprise. But when you find out other people say, well, hell, then I want it too. I'll just pay whatever it takes to move there and also take advantage of unlimited water. Then they say, well, there ought to be some restrictions. And here they come. All right. So La Paz and most of its neighbors do not contain active management areas, or AMAs, zones that require groundwater regulation under state code. Just 5 parts of the state, including Phoenix and Tucson, have AMAs, while rural agricultural areas have no such protections. Or it's not, I don't think that the water is free. I think I said that earlier. But I mean, it's free for all, like no restrictions on how much you can use anyway. I guess you can pay for it. And I guess that's the issue. The Saudis can, or the Sauds can anyhow. We live in 2 very different Arizonas right now, said Travis Lingenfelter, a supervisor for neighboring Mojave County, neighboring Mojave County. If you're in an AMA, you have water security. You have water certainty. If you're outside of the AMA, it's the Wild West, which is, of course, exactly what you probably demanded that it be. And now it's upsetting because someone from the Wild East has come to take from the Wild West. This non-restrictive environment has attracted not only local and domestic farmers, but also international companies that are unable to grow such water-intensive crops at home. Yeah, that would be kind of hard in the Sahara Desert, don't you think, or the Arabian Desert. They're coming here because Arizona almost invites it, Lingenfelter said. They do invite it. There's no rules for groundwater. That's inviting it. Saudi Arabia instituted a near ban on cultivating green fodder in November of 2018 with the goal of easing pressure on water resources, according to a report from the Dutch government. To overcome inevitable shortages, the kingdom directed dairy farms to turn to imports. With discussions of future cutbacks already on the horizon, Saudi Arabian dairy giant Almarai, I'm not certain exactly where the, emphasis falls there, but Almarai maybe, secured 9,834 acres in Vicksburg in a $47.5 million deal through its fully owned subsidiary Fondamonte Arizona LLC in March of 2014. Nearly 2 years later, Almarai announced a $31.8 million deal for 1,790 acres in Southern California. The transaction served to improve and secure Almarai's supply of the highest quality alfalfa hay, a move that the company described in Saudi exchange reports as, quote, in line with the Saudi government direction toward conserving local resources. Save our water, use up somebody else's. It's actually quite a brilliant plan. If they want to be able to guarantee their population food security, they know that they can't really do that domestically, said Natalie Koch, or possibly Koch, K-O-C-H, a geography professor at Syracuse University and author of a recent book about the link between Arizona and the Arabian Peninsula. The Arizonan land was particularly appealing to the kingdom, quote, because you can get more bang for your buck when you buy that farm, according to Koch, whatever her name may be, pronunciation-wise. While Fondamonte received permits for 8 water wells in 2016 and has long been growing alfalfa on the property, the firm only came into the public eye last June when the Arizona Republic exposed its $25 per acre lease terms, or about 1/6 of the current market value. How did that happen? Irwin, the La Paz County Supervisor, took immediate action at the time, sending a letter to then State Representative Regina Cobb, a Republican, asking that she submit a request to the Attorney General's office to investigate the State Land Department's leases with Fondamonte. I can't believe there was a company utilizing advantageous terms for leasing land to make a gigantic profit. The Republicans, however, are riding to the rescue to put a stop to that crap real soon. They're here for a reason, because they've depleted their own resources, Irwin told The Hill, and now they're utilizing our resources and shipping that material overseas. Yup, that's right. Free enterprise and all that stuff. Irwin's letter described the water scarcity issues that her constituents have been enduring, as well as the possibility that one area basin could be depleted within 25 to 30 years. The supervisor went on to accuse the Arizona State Land Department of negligence, alleging the agency gave foreign companies sweetheart deals. She requested the return of any potential back funds and current payments owed to La Paz County beneficiaries. Fondamonte quickly became a core campaign issue for Arizona politicians, including Attorney General Chris Mays, M-A-Y-E-S, and who is a Democrat, as well as Governor Katie Hobbs, whom we know to be a Democrat as well. Upon taking office in January, Mays, or Mayes, I'm not certain which, promised to repeal the state's deals with Fondamonte within 6 months. That's socialism, because a Democrat is doing it. And said the company should repay Arizona $38 million for its water usage, NBC affiliate 12 News reported. The administration is working aggressively to find ways to crack down on the sweetheart deals given to foreign businesses by then Governor Ducey, including potentially requiring metering and reporting. Christian Slater, not that Christian Slater, but the Christian Slater who is in fact a spokesperson for Hobbs, told The Hill in an email. That must be fun. Anyway, Governor Hobbs knows Arizona's water is a public resource, and it's time the state started managing it better, Slater said. But I do have a feeling that they won't be trying to manage it better for domestic Arizonan farmers. Well, anyway, While the prospects of a full takedown remain uncertain, Mayes announced last Friday that Fondomonte's permits for 2 new wells, issued 8 months ago, had been revoked. She called upon Arizonans to, quote, wake up. Oh, don't become woke, though, and address the crisis before it is too late, while accusing her predecessors of being asleep at the wheel amid worsening drought conditions. It's outrageous the state would consider granting new wells to allow the Saudis to pump millions of gallons of water to grow alfalfa for their cows, Mayes tweeted on Tuesday. This water belongs to the people of Arizona and La Paz County, and now it's going to stay that way. I mean, I really do think it should, probably, and it's interesting that it takes Democrats to do it, but yeah, it's not that Republicans didn't suddenly find reason to object. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if a lot of this was being done on behalf of farmers who will be voting Republican for having fixed the whole thing and somehow believing that the Democrats who actually fixed it are the evil internationalist, globalist, you-know-whats who are stealing all the water and the money. But, well, that water really should be protected one way or the other. Mayes met on April 4th with Arizona Department of Water Resources Director Tom Bushatsky, with whom she raised the discrepancy issues she discovered in the well permit applications, along with her belief that these permits must be revoked. Richie Taylor, a spokesperson for the Attorney General, told The Hill. ADWR, that's Arizona Department of Water Resources, ADWR confirmed Mayes and Bushatsky met to discuss water issues, but said the agency has no comment regarding the matter involving Fondomonte Farms. Nonetheless, listings for the 2 sites in ADWR's Wells Registry confirmed drilling authority was revoked per request of the Arizona State Land Department on April 13th. Patrice Horstman, a Coconino County supervisor, told The Hill she was, quote, very pleased with the administration's decision to revoke the drilling permits, which she described as counterproductive to Arizona and its limited water availability. This permit, which took advantage of Arizona's failure, whose failure? Arizona's failure? I don't know about that. To allow many rural counties to manage its groundwater is dangerous to the future, water viability of the state, said Horstman, whose county is east of Mojave in northern Arizona. While these 2 pending wells will not come to fruition, literally, I guess actual fruition, there are still 8 existing wells irrigating the fields of alfalfa on Fondomonte's Vicksburg farm. Addressing whether the revocation could still have an impact on water conservation despite that ongoing irrigation, Slater said Hobbs promised to take action on foreign governments profiting off Arizona groundwater, and she did, which I guess means that's all she's doing. She will always fight however she can to ensure Arizona water is used in the best interests of Arizonans and preserve our natural resources for generations to come, he added. Fondomonte and its wells may be garnering the most media coverage for its transcontinental water consumption, but it's not the only international company drawing on the region's limited water supply. The Abu Dhabi-based Al Dahra Group also grows alfalfa in Southern California and Arizona on 6 farms the firm described as strategically located in forage growing areas. Forage growing areas. Okay. Neither Fondomonte nor the Al Dahra Group responded to the Hill's request for comment. Middle Eastern cows and livestock are basically drinking Arizona water, said Lingenfelter, the Mojave County supervisor. We're shipping products over back to the Middle East, he continued. They're using finite Arizona groundwater in rural areas to do it. We need to plug that gap. Well, I mean, would you have objected to an American company bottling that water and shipping it to Saudi Arabian cows in exchange for cash? I'm just curious, how far does this objection go? But the Emirati company gets far less attention than its Saudi counterpart, a discrepancy highlighted by recent legislation that seeks to restrict foreign ownership of Arizona farmlands. The HB 2376 bill, sponsored by State Representative Leo Biasiucci. I'm guessing at the pronunciation of that. Biasiucci. It's Italian looking. Passed through the Arizona House, he's a Republican, by the way, in February, and will next be reviewed by the state Senate. While the bill has been championed by Republicans, it received the support of 12 of 29 House Democrats. Not terribly surprising, right? The bill stipulates that the sale, lease, or sublease of state agricultural property may not be made to a foreign entity. That sounds like it might be a little overbroad, but which would include not only state-controlled enterprises, but also any company headquartered in or majority owned by citizens in 8 specific countries. They're going to run into trouble with this one. While Saudi Arabia is among those countries, alongside China, Cuba, Iran, North Korea, Russia, Syria, and Venezuela, the United Arab Emirates is notably absent. It's interesting. So I guess they probably said, that list of countries is not unusual, and they might be able to base it on the federal government having imposed sanctions on those countries, and that might help them get past any tests. Although honestly, maybe there are no tests for restricting trade that way with foreign countries. I mean, it's a little bit heavy-handed in terms of, the small government party stepping in and telling private enterprise who they can and can't sell to. But, they might be able to make a national security or sanctions list argument about that. They're reacting to the broader discussion within the United States right now, this kind of agricultural nationalism, said Koch, the Syracuse professor. Saudi Arabia, she explained, has become a lightning rod for Americans in a way that the UAE has not, although they really should. They even have a counterpart to MBZ. I mean, 2 of the initials are the same. Come on. Even among super liberal, cosmopolitan types of people, the racism, the xenophobia against Saudis that comes pouring out of their mouths instantly is astonishing, Koch added. Evicting a Saudi Arabian farm from Arizona's rural southwest would likely amount to only a cosmetic solution rather than achieving tangible conservation benefits, experts agreed. It still doesn't address our groundwater issue, said Irwin, the La Paz County supervisor. It's a little piece. It's a little step. The foreign ownership bill only covers a very narrow group, while most of the region's agriculture involves domestic companies, according to Koch, who said local stakeholders used to describe the Saudi deal as just a drop in the bucket. If it is really just a drop in the bucket, then kicking them out doesn't really do anything, she said. The fundamental problem is the outdated water laws, and this bill just kind of diverts attention from that problem. I see now why there might be opposition to it, perhaps among Democrats. With the goal of solving that problem, the supervisors of La Paz, Mojave, Coconino, and, we've run into this one before, and we've done Coconino before, but Yavapai, I hope, county, all together, all these 4 counties are adopting a joint resolution demanding that lawmakers finally provide water certainty for planning to rural Arizona by passing groundwater stewardship laws this year. I bet that most rural Arizonans have campaigned for years against these water management districts that them folks in the big city like Tucson and Flagstaff and various other locations have, right? But now, suddenly they need to have them. On the other hand, in many non-AMA rural regions, the free-for-all has led to overpumping of aquifers and the depletion of municipal water supplies, according to the resolution. Water security is a top 3 issue of concern for Arizona residents, regardless of rural or urban residence or political affiliation. That's an interesting note, the supervisors stated. Regarding the resolution, Slater said the governor is meeting with stakeholders and examining paths forward to protect access to water for every community and ensure Arizona's natural resources are used in the best interest of Arizonans, which I feel like he said already. This will be one of several issues reviewed by the governor's Water Policy Council, he added. Describing her years of fighting for groundwater protections as an uphill battle, Irwin stressed that she and her colleagues have never been able to get the legislature to hear any of the related bills they've championed. Lingenfelter, the Mojave County supervisor, echoed these sentiments, adding that he's been so actively working on this issue since at least 2017. Every single year we work with our legislators on this legislation, and it never gets a hearing. Not even one hearing, Lingenfelter said. Rather than bringing the government in to shut everybody down, Irwin stressed that she just wants, quote, to put some sort of conservation measures in place for a future for everybody, which is, generally speaking, what Democrats want to do with all their resources. But somehow that's Hitler socialism when it happens that Democratic direction. Farming is very important to my county, Irwin continued. We need to talk about conservation at some point to make sure that we can continue to exist. Going forward, Lingenfelter said he feels hopeful, citing Hobbs's recent issuance of an executive order calling for the modernization of Arizona groundwater code. We deserve water certainty and water security just as cities do, he said. This is very interesting. Noting that nearly 2 million Arizonans call the rural desert areas home. The groundwater basins in parts of rural Arizona are the only available resources there, or what Lingenfelter described as our forever water. We don't have a plan B in a lot of those areas that are using groundwater for 100% of their water supply, he said. Well, welcome to the ranks of the conservationists, Arizona Republicans. I wonder if it's too late.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show with David Waldman.
Well, that's it for today's little 1-hour show today. I hope you enjoyed our installment to keep you occupied and company while I'm on my way out of town to see the college boy graduate. We'll be back on Monday with a little rerun for you tomorrow. See you then when Greg Dworkin returns next week.